Today we're going to discuss why life exists. I'm David. This is Nebula, the physics cat. She's going to help us on our journey to discover how and why we do everything we do, where did life come from, and how did those building blocks of life originally end up into the first cells and eventually us. This is my invention here for my keyboard. It's a keyboard protector for cats. So she likes to walk on the keyboard when I'm writing, and so by putting this on top of it, she can sleep or stand on it or even lose interest, which she just wanted to be allowed to do it. And the reason I mention this is because whenever humans invent something, it's actually very related to how life came to be. In this concept we call ODC, Optimally Dissipative Configuration. So in the same way that humans invent things and have behaviors is the same way those original atoms and molecules in that primordial ooze got together and did something. And that's the whole reason behind this channel. So if Nebula allows us, we're gonna go for a little tour. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And we're gonna walk to our little fire pit area here, see if Nebula wants to join us. So what do we mean by ODC, Optimally Dissipative Configuration? Well, essentially, it's the most common denominator as to what connects us, like humans and life forms, to the rest of the creative intelligence of the universe. That's right, I said it. And Nebula is going to help us talk about what ODC is, Optimally Dissipative Configuration. So basically we're saying that it's all about entropy and entropy production. What is entropy? Well, most of us think of it as maybe your house getting messy or death and decay, but it's actually the key to the creation of everything, because entropy is actually a very universal force. So anytime you have a gradient difference between temperature or gravity or height, or even ideas are included in this, then entropy is trying to move energy and matter as quickly and efficiently as possible. So the entropy production, the maximum of it within the constraints of the system, equals the configuration that you see. We're going to make our way up to the mezzanine. So when we talk about why life exists, a lot of us know that in our solar system, the Earth is within what we call the Goldilocks zone. So it's not too far from it that it's too cold, and it's not too close that everything boils over, like in maybe Mercury or Venus. But the next question I would ask is, just because life could exist, why does life do exist? Why does it emerge? What is it that the universe wants so that we should be here? And for the longest time, obviously, these have been classified as religious or philosophical questions that science doesn't really have a say in, because it has to do with belief systems, and basically every human that's ever existed has had some kind of a belief system, and even if it's based on a general one, everyone has kind of different views on how it should work. So in discovering ODC, Optimally Dissipative Configuration, we had to find a solution that's universally acceptable. So in other words, let's say human beings have belief systems and different gods in different places in the world and at different times. Let's say there's a living society outside of our solar system, like in a distant star. Obviously, they're not going to come up with the same belief systems that we have. They've never heard of Jesus or whatever the case may be. And so we need to find, if there is one, we need to find a solution, an answer that is universal. And that's how we come up with ODC, Optimally Dissipative Configuration. Basically, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. What would apply to us in our ideas and everything that we do should apply also to molecules and life forms in other planets. And so that's why it's a very broad general term. But if we break it down, it has to do with what is most efficient, what is the fastest way for matter and energy to move. And if there's an opportunity, then the universe finds a way. And maybe that's a lot to take in, but that's the answer as to how and why we are here. And the reason I'm saying this in this area of the studio is because Galileo, who saw for himself that indeed the Earth is not the center of the universe and that it's actually going around the sun, just like many other planets, and that was outrageous at the time to suggest that we are not the center of the universe. And we're doing something similar here. She doesn't like not having all of the attention. And so we're doing something similar here with the fact that we're suggesting that the life as we are is indeed just another thing in the universe. So we didn't just arbitrarily decide on ODC, Optimally Dissipative Configuration, without offering the law of creation formula. And as we discussed, it has to be a universal thing. So here we're going to be talking about entropy production. Entropy production means what is the fastest, most efficient way for energy and materials to get through. So if you think about, for example, all this fuel and energy that's deep in the earth called crude oil, before humans got to it, it was just sitting there with all this potential energy. And it turns out that if somebody could harness all that energy and increase the entropy of the system, because all of that potential energy is actually low entropy, it's a lot of energy concentrated somewhere, but if it could escape, it would. And that's the whole concept behind ODC, that if there is a way for that potential energy to be harnessed or made useful or to dissipate, the universe finds it. And that's what we get the creative intelligence of the universe from, because it is doing what our intelligence does, which is to solve problems, which is to find ways to make things move faster and better and more efficiently. So here's our formula here again. So the optimal configuration, the final configuration, whether it's us, Nebula the physics cat, or the original life forms or protocells in the original primordial ooze over 4 billion years ago, if there's a way to increase entropy of the system within its constraints, the system, whether it's us or the universe, will choose or pick the one that's winning or the best, and that's the final configuration that we will see. And again, we start to see here the intelligence of the universe, as Kitty is letting me know here that maybe she wants to jump on my shoulders. So we go like this, give her a chance. She likes to be involved with this, especially when we start talking about how the law of creation and this formula here and the concept of ODC, Optimally Dissipative Configuration, is the key that connects us to the creative intelligence of the universe. And here's how. So the final configuration, whether it's an invention, a strategy, a solution, a design, an idea, or an organism, is the one that within the system has the most entropy production, or that's able to dissipate whatever's in the system the best. And this is where we get lifelike qualities out of inanimate conditions. So for example, the constraints of the system would be its context, its conditions, its reality, its law. And when all those molecules and atoms are dissipating within a system, they're learning, they're experimenting, they're trying different configurations to see which one will be selected or chosen, and that's what we call intelligence. And then when you have that next configuration, that new structure, that body actually becomes a memory, because it makes it easier for it to propagate in the future. So by now we should be starting to understand why life exists, or why life came to be in the first place. But as we talked about before Galileo, and maybe Copernicus and some of them, we thought that the Earth was the center of the universe and that everything else, including the sun, revolved around it. Now, not everybody was happy when we finally learned for real that the answer to that is that no, in fact, our star is our center within our solar systems, and we're just one of many planets that go around it. But we've also heard about this Goldilocks zone where it's not too close to the sun that water would boil away, and it's not too far that everything would freeze. But the next question we would ask is, just because the Earth could have life evolve on it, why should it? Why should the universe put something we call life in that so-called habitable zone, the Goldilocks zone, versus not? And that question used to be reserved more for philosophies and religions, let's say, and science, I'm not sure why, there's probably a lot of factors, is not really involved in that discussion or that narrative. And I say today that we can be part of that narrative because we do have real answers as to how and why we are here. Why should there be life where liquid water is there? What is it about a planet with life versus a planet with non-life that would make it more entropic or more capable of dissipating energy than without it? Because that is the force that we found as to why life should evolve on a planet versus another planet that does not. What do you think about that, Nebula? So that's our video for today. Please like and subscribe if you like what you see. And I would also like to know what topics or things you would like me to bring up as perhaps an exception to ODC, that we might not see how not everything in the universe is able to fit under our ODC or law of creation. And so I'll take all those comments into consideration, and we will see you next time on Law of Creation. Say bye-bye, Nebula. Say bye-bye, Nebula. All right, we call that a video. Why life exists.